Okay, so it is 7 o'clock. So let's get started on this presentation. A little bit about how to build your property company properly. First of all, we're going to go through a little bit about Sourced and why we qualify to talk to you about this kind of thing, and then we'll get into the detail. This is not the kind of webinar where we're not giving away a lot of information. This webinar is purely for your education. This hopefully will make you see the way that you get into property and the way that you build your property business far, far better than just looking at it from the outside, sort of thinking, yeah, I want to get into that strategy, or I want to get into that strategy, and blindly walking into those strategies without having a holistic view of your overall property business. So without further ado, let's get cracking. So first of all, about me, that is a very well photoshopped picture of me. If you meet me in real life, prepare to feel disappointed. My name is Chris Kirkwood, and I'm the development director here at Sourced, which basically means I'm in charge of all the training and all of the ongoing support for all of our franchisees. Now, as you'll see in a minute, we currently have 70 franchisees, each of which are building their own business. Each one of those businesses is not a kind of a template that we've set out for them, because everybody's individual situation is different. They come to us with different personal needs. They come to us with different financial needs. And so what we do is we listen to what they currently have, we listen to where they want to be, and we marry those two things up. We create a timeline, we create a path for them to get from where they are to where they want to be. That's basically what I do. That's the framework that I work around. And then everything else, all the other property deals, all the trading, all the flips, all the refurbs, all the conversions, everything is part of that path from current to where you want to be in the future. Now, personally, on my own, I've founded, run, and grown multiple property businesses in multiple businesses, should I say, in different sectors. So I've got a good knowledge of business, not just in the property sector, but looking at the property sector a little more closely. I've been involved in deals from one of the properties that I bought, which was in Salford, was £55,000, and now we're Sourced are responsible for building Regent Plaza, which has a GDV of £150 million. So that's the kind of scope of my personal involvement in property, and I've executed lots of different strategies in that growth. So I've done straight buying and putting tenants in straight away. I've done buying and flipping and going through the refurb and selling on. I've done buying and flipping. I've done everything. I was quite well known for a while for going through rent to rent. So when we're looking at cash flow strategies, rent to rent HMO, I'll be particularly interested in any feedback that we get for the HMO stuff with rent to rent. So what I do now with Sourced is I assess proposals for franchisees. So what will generally happen in a week is I'll get about 30 to 50 property deals that are sent to me from our franchisees, brand new deals. Now, I've trained them to assess those deals, but what they want from us is they want a second opinion on those deals. So I'll go through the numbers and I'll feed back to them on what I think of those deals. Now, obviously, at that point, I'm not only thinking about the deal itself and whether it stacks up and whether they've looked at all of their numbers correctly, but I'm also thinking about their path and if that fits onto their path and if that helps them grow their property business and achieve their goals, because that's something that I think a lot of people neglect when they're getting into property, hence the reason for this webinar. So Sourced itself has got a number of things going on. The franchise and our 70 franchisees on the right hand side there, and there's another picture of me. Looking a little bit more animated than you're going to see me tonight. We've got the 70 franchisees and we aid and assist them. Everything else that we do is sort of centered around those franchisees. So it's there to help the franchisees in one way or another. So on the left-hand side, we've got the property section, which is the red section. That section sells the franchisees' deals. So if they have a deal that they want to sell, we can put it onto that part of our website. There's also a lot of information and education on there for you. So if you're interested in learning a bit more about different strategies or looking at some of the other videos that we've done or listening to our podcast, you'd go to that section to get access to all of that information. Sourced Capital, the next one along in blue. Sourced Capital is our peer-to-peer lending platform, which is fully FCA regulated. Now, basically what that does is it puts our franchisees deals on there, and we raise money to do those deals. So it's like bridging finance. Like I say, it's fully FCA regulated, and it means that we can fund our franchisees deals. We can help them get from go along their path in order to get them closer to reaching their goals. Our funding is based on 70% of the GDV, which I'll explain a little bit more later. Developments right in the middle. I already mentioned that we're building Regent Plaza, which is a £150 million GDV valuation of 5 different blocks of flats in Manchester. So 525 flats we're building in Manchester. We're already through that process. Foundations have been built, piling has been put in, and that development, from looking at it from the outside, you might think, well, you know, that's great and that looks good for you, Sourced, but what does that mean to your franchisees? Well, actually, that's one of the core ways that franchisees can make money in a very short period of time. We'll get to that. There's a little tease for you. We'll get to that later. Then we've got the care section, which is something at the moment that says learn more, because we're investigating that section. We're investigating that part of the market to give our franchisees another option for exiting on the property deals that they do. So I'm not going to go into that anymore, but that's basically what Source do at the moment. We've got 5 different sections to our business. And how they've all come together look a little bit like this. So the pilot scheme for Source was launched in January 2017. And the franchise model was launched a little bit later that year. Very quickly, we hit 20 franchisees because I think a lot of people, specifically in this sector, realize that it's not just about the education. There are plenty of people out there that can give you education, but as soon as you walk out the door at the end of that course, you don't really hear from them again unless you pay to go on to another course. Now, we looked at that sector and we thought that is not the correct way to do it. Source believe that people need a lot of support all the way through their journey. It's not just a case of education. I once heard a statistic that something like 93% of people that go on education courses alone never put that information into practice. And that's because they need reassurance generally, especially if they're getting into a new sector. If they're coming into property from somewhere else, they need that help. They need that constant support and reassurance that they're doing the right thing, which is why we have many, many touch points for all of our franchisees to come to us and to get that support all the way through their journey. In August 2018, we received FCA approval for our lending platform. And then in October, so shortly after that, we hit 40 franchisees. Sourced Capital, the reason for that FCA approval was launched in November 2018. And our development of £150 million GDV, that was launched in February 2019. So in March 2019, so just last year, we received approval for ISA and pension funding to go into our capital program. So now our franchisees can benefit from ISAs and pension money being invested into their projects in order for them to facilitate the franchisee doing that project. Source Care, we launched our intention to get into that market in September 2019, and we're still putting something together for that, which should be on the market fairly soon. And just last month, we hit 70 franchisees all around the country in the property market with access to our help and our knowledge in order to make the most of what they're doing. So this webinar is going to focus on building a profitable property business from scratch. And I've just had a hand raise, so I'm just going to see if I can find that. Okay, he's not, it's gone. So the property sector, in property, I'm sure you'll have known, right? So you'll have investigated all the different courses, all of the different options that you've got when you come into the property sector. And one of the beautiful things about this, when somebody says that they're in property, that really isn't scratching the surface of that iceberg, because that could mean one of many, many, many different things. There are many different niches that you can go into in property. And so that's a great thing for you, because what you start off doing in property, you don't necessarily still have to be doing in a year's time or 2 years' time. You can pick and choose the exact thing that you're doing in order to suit your situation. And it means that almost anybody can get involved in this industry. If you're interested in making money out of property, you know, we at Sourced, we believe that anybody can do that. we've found ways and we've structured ways that anybody can invest in property from as little, for us, from as little as £250. You can have an investment that is secured against the property. Now that obviously goes up to much bigger investments, much bigger structures. But the point is, you don't need to start on those big structures in order to get into property. So most people, what they do is they realize that there's an opportunity. They realize that there's something in property that can pay them their year's salary in one deal, and they look at that and they get really excited about it. Sometimes they get a little bit too fixated on it, and instead of putting their head up and having a look around and thinking about how they're going to build their business properly, they do a lot of research into how they can do that one way, that one thing that they found that they've become so enthused about. And they don't look around at how they're going to build it. Property, for some reason, when people first get into, it's not treated as a business, which it should be. It's treated as, wow, you can make so much money out of property. Look at these things that I found. And so few people actually think, okay, if I was building a business, would I structure this in exactly the same way? Now, how much money you make is entirely up to you and up to how much effort you put into it, but it's also based on your financial situation and your lifestyle, your current situation. How much time do you have to put into this? But it's all under your control. But what you need to do is you need to build your business intelligently. And like I just said, you don't want to go for if you're building a normal business and you thought, well, I'll start off here and I'll advertise locally and I'll get people in locally and I'll start to get a bit of traction, and then I'll build the business up organically until I get to a point where in 5 years' time, I'm going to be going for much bigger contracts. I'm going to be negotiating much bigger deals. In property, a lot of people don't think like that. They just get really excited about the big numbers that they can generate from the one deal. And you need to take that mindset of the business and you need to apply that into your property business. So, for example, one of the fast cash flow strategies that we're going to come up with is, in fact, one of the strategies that we move on to after the fast cash flow is Nadia from East London generated £60,000 profit in just 8 weeks. Now that for me is exceptional because she's generated a huge amount of profit in just 8 weeks. Now, I'm not even going to use that. Just because one person has achieved that, I don't think that's achievable for the majority of people when they're using that strategy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that into the mid-term kind of strategies because I think that's more feasible. The short-term strategies that we're going to talk about this evening can make you money even quicker from that than that 8 weeks. So this is the pipeline that I created because I think this goes to show exactly what you need to start thinking about when you're building your business. So on that, I hope you can see my cursor. On the left-hand side, the gray boxes, you can see that it takes 2 months. So this is the start at the bottom where it says trade, flips, and conversion. This is the start of your timeline. This is month 0. Now, if you find a property and you're going to trade it on and you find it right at the start of your timeline, the actual time that it takes for you to get paid is the top of that box where the dollar sign is in the gray box. So you find that property and it takes 2 months to get paid. And that's the key. That's what you really need to focus on. When you find these deals and you might tell your friends or you might tell your other half and you'd say, I found this amazing deal. It's going to make us £100,000. The first question for me is when? When is it going to make you £100,000? And how are you going to sustainably manage your current situation until you get to that exit point where you actually make that £100,000? Now, 2 months isn't too long to wait. So what can happen is you start your journey and it takes you 2 months to make your first pot of cash. And then while you've been conveyancing, while you've been seeing that deal through, you've also found another deal. So in month 1, we've started another gray box to the left. And if that takes 2 months to get paid, that means that we've now started a really nice pipeline where we get a set amount of money every single month. So every month we know we're getting paid. Typical sourcing fee is probably going to be around £3,000. And for most of the people that I speak to, I'd have to say that £3,000 is enough to cover their costs, to keep their business going. So we've got that on the left-hand side, and that's on the left-hand side because for me, that's the first thing that you should be thinking about. Now at the bottom here, we've used the terminology trade, but as I'm going to show you, there are more options than just trading in order to generate cash flow for your property business in the short term. So then when you've established that trading, you're going to move on then to flips. So in the center, we've got the orange boxes, which are flips. So we've put these in 4-month boxes. And as you can see, from the bottom of the box to the top of the box, that's how long it takes you to get paid. So flips are going to take you even longer. Now, most people that come into property probably say that they've got 3 or 4 months worth of money before they start to need to think about getting a job if you are going to come into property full time. Now, by trading deals, we've generated 2 pots of cash. In fact, 3 pots of cash before that 4-month threshold. So you're looking at having already turned over, let's say, £9,000. Now, the flip is going to generate more money, which is why it's a dollar note and not a dollar coin. But just in case that all of your eggs are in that one basket for making money before that 4-month threshold for flips. So you've got far more security in going through trading and developing that first before you then move on to flips. And when you've got that pipeline coming through for trading, that's when you move on to flips, and that's when you start to look for these bigger pots of cash, because from flips you're going to make 20, 25, 30 plus £1,000 from each deal. Now that means that over the year you're going to be able to fit fewer of these deals in because they take longer, they take more time, and they're much more involved than just trading a deal on, because obviously you're not only finding the deal as you would on a trade, but you're seeing it through as well. And then we move on to conversions. So conversions, let's say you found one right on month 0. And we've had that happen, actually. We had somebody who was in training for commercial conversions. And we'll go through commercial conversions in all of our training schedule a little bit later. But they were in training and they found a deal, which they then executed, which will make them 6 figures. So that can happen. So what we've done is we've put this all the way through that first year. So from month 0 all the way through to month 12. And, you know, these bigger projects, these bigger conversion projects, they can go on for even longer than that. You know, if you're looking at new build and you're really excited about plots that you're seeing locally to you, then that could easily be a 24-month plus project that you're embarking on then. So what you need to think about is, if you want to be in property and you really genuinely want to make a property business work, how are you going to maintain your sustainability in your lifestyle, your current lifestyle, if not even better it, within those 24 months? So as you can see, if you build your property business quickly, all of these lines here in the gray and in the orange are times that you're getting paid. And yet there are none in that conversion project. However, this is the project. This conversion project is the one that most people get really enthusiastic about when they first come into property. And now that's not wrong. That's not a bad thing. You know, I love that enthusiasm. I really like working with people that are really enthusiastic about that long-term end goal that they've got. My point is that you just need to think it through. And instead of being emotionally involved and emotionally attached to that one big project, think about it as any other business and how you would go about building that business properly. If you think about this in terms of contracts, and if your business was after contracts, you wouldn't just shoot for the moon and go for that one big contract constantly. You would think about smaller contracts to supplement your cash flow. And then after you've got a place in the market that people recognize and understand what your business is about, that's when you'd move on to those bigger projects. So working from that time, that pipeline, in 1 year, we managed to do 11 trades. We managed to do 4 flips. We managed to do 1 conversion. Now, I've taken these as fairly modest sums of money in order to get for each one of those categories. So £3,000 for trading, 25 grand for flips, and £80,000 for conversions, which is very low. Now, if we've only gone for that 1 conversion and it has come off in 12 months, we've just made £80,000. So we've turned away over £100,000, well, £133,000 is what we've turned away of potential income that we could have been making during that time. So actually we'd have made more money by doing the smaller deals. It isn't just about that one deal. So what you need to do is you need to concentrate on your cash flow and take care of your obligations, because what that does is it gives you longer in property to then make those big sums of money. And once you have your monthly income, then you can start to build your pot. Because of that £3,000 that you're making every month from trading properties, you might not necessarily need that 25 grand flip turnover that you're generating. So you can put that into a pot. You can save that to go towards your bigger project, your bigger conversion project. Now, average conveyancing takes 93 days. Don't know whether you knew that. That's a nerdy fact that I carry around with me all the time. So average conveyancing takes 93 days in England. So you might be thinking, I know a little bit about property, Chris, but if it takes 93 days to go from putting my property on the market or having my offer accepted to purchasing a property, how can I possibly make money quicker than 93 days, basically 3 months? Well, let's have a look at some of the options that you've got. First of all, you've got deal sourcing and packaging. So that's where you would go out, find a deal, and then sell it on to an investor. You've got rent to rent HMO or serviced accommodation. So you would go out and find a property and you'd rent it, and then you would then sublet it as either a HMO or a serviced accommodation. Now at Sourced, we have Sourced Capital, which is our peer-to-peer platform. We have an incentive for our franchisees, which will make them money as soon as they can introduce an investor, and that investor's money is put towards one of our deals. We've also got an incentive at Source for our franchisees to sell the units that we're building at Regent Plaza. Now, that's a fantastic opportunity for our franchisees, but that is also available to you, but from other plots. Only our franchisees can sell our units at Regent Plaza, but you can certainly get involved with other new build developments, and I'll go into that in just a second. And then finally, there's lease options. So lease options are a little bit like the rent-to-rent HMO or serviced accommodation. That's how they would work. But with lease options, you obviously get the option to purchase, which in generating cash quickly, we probably wouldn't use. Lease options can also be traded. So lease options sort of fall in between deal sourcing and packaging, and also rent to rent. So that's why I've put them on their own category here, just to make sure that if you hear about them being a fast cash flow strategy, that you don't think that I haven't taken them into consideration. So sourcing, you would find a property, you would do the numbers on it, and then you would sell it on to an investor for a fee. And as you can see in that top line there, you would get your fee on exchange, because when your investor exchanges on that property, they are legally bound to buy that property. And that's the point in the contract that I would have with my investor, that they would need to pay me for my services in finding them the property and introducing them to the deal. So if the sourcing fee is usually paid on exchange, and the average time for conveyancing through the whole process is 93 days, I think it's safe to say that your exchange money should be due somewhere between 30 and 45 days, which is 4, 5, 6 weeks is what you should be looking at for getting money out of sourcing a deal. Now, in that pipeline that I drew a 2-month period. So that 213,000 that we generated from that year in property with that pipeline that I showed you earlier, that's actually quite a modest expectation of time for getting paid out of trading. So you should be paid on exchange, and you should be paid around £3,000. Now that's usually 2% of the purchase price. So if you're selling something that's a lot more expensive, then obviously you'll get more. The biggest sourcing fee that I ever heard of was for a plot of land in London, which was going to be sold for 450 million, and the sourcing fee on that was 2%, and so £900,000 plus VAT was that sourcing fee. So 2% of the purchase price is normally the right amount, and going by the average sort of investment property in the UK, that usually works out to be around £3,000. So tips on sourcing are going to be the same as the tips on everything else, and I will leave that till the end. So rent to rent HMO and serviced accommodation is subletting a rental property, and what you would do is you would rent it off a landlord, and you would rent it out either as a HMO, and so to multiple tenants, or a serviced accommodation. So you'd make it like a holiday let, like the kind of stuff that you see on Airbnb. So the vendor or the person that owns that property is then hands off. You're managing that property and you're paying the rent to them. And there are many, many different advantages for the vendor why rent to rent HMO or service accommodation is a good idea for them and makes sense. Not only is it hands off, but also the amount of money that they would make on rent to rent in comparison to going through a high street agent is just obscene. It's ridiculous. It's usually on average, I'd say 30 to 40% more from a rent-to-rent operator, if you've done your sums right, like the way that we would teach you at Sourced. So timescale to set up, really it's a month. I'd want to be generating an income from that property for a month, but in all of our calculations, we've looked at 2 months until you start to generate an income. Again, so we're being conservative. We're building in a margin of error to make sure that your plan is achievable. Returns, I would say, on average, is £700 per month. When I had my rent-to-rent portfolio, I was generating around £1,000 per property for each of my properties. Which, I mean, you can work it out. If you need to generate £2,000 or £3,000 per month in order to cover all of your bills, then it only takes 2 or 3 properties in order to do that. And with all rent-to-rent contracts, I would say I would never go into a rent-to-rent contract for anything less than 3 years. So if you imagine you sign one of those deals up, you know that you're going to be generating £1,000 per month for the next 3 years. That's a huge weight off your shoulders when it comes to, putting food on the table and taking care of your family. Again, tips we're going to leave till the end. Off plan. So Sourced are building these flats in Manchester called Regent Plaza. And our franchisees can sell these flats and earn an 8% commission. Now, part of the obligation, if somebody wants to buy one of those flats, is that they have to exchange in 28 days, and the franchisee would get their payment on exchange. So if you imagine you introduce an investor to one of the flats in Regent Plaza, they would have to pay their deposit money on within 28 days, and you would get paid within 28 days. So almost, in fact, if you introduce an investor today, you would make that money by the end of March. So within this month, you could make that 8% commission. So the average return for that is around £16,000. So one investor you introduce into a new build flat, you could get £16,000 in 28 days. Now that's a pretty hefty chunk that is going to take care of, I'd say, 50% of most people's sort of needed income over a 12-month period. And you've just secured that within your first 28 days. Now, I said that this kind of thing was available to other people as well. So if you're not a franchisee of Sourced, you couldn't have access to the Regent Plaza stock. But what you could do is you could build a relationship with other off-plan developers, and you can certainly sell those flats for them. Now, if you were going to do that, your commission margin would certainly be nowhere near as healthy as 8%. You'd probably be working on around 3 or 4% for the other developers. Now, that means that your return is going to go down to £6,000, £7,000, £8,000, depending on the purchase price of the flats. But still, it's a healthy amount of money. And if it's something that you want to get into, then it's something that you can do and turn that money around within 28 days. And for our Sourced franchisees, this would be exclusive to these guys. We fund our franchisees deals through our peer-to-peer lending facility, which is fully FCA regulated, like I told you before. Now, as a Sourced franchisee, if they say to one of their friends, "I know you've got £100,000 in your ISA or £100,000 in your pension, why don't you transfer that into the capital fund, and you can make a return based on what they're offering at the time." The last deal that we did offered a return of either 10 or 12%, depending on how much money you put into it. So you introduce your friend to our last deal, and in that deal, they've made a 12% return. What do you get out of it? Well, you would get 5% of whatever they invested. So your friend brings their pension in, they invest £100,000, your commission would be £5,000. And how long would it take you to make that money? Well, if your friend invested today and we use that money for one of our property deals tomorrow, you would get paid as soon as that investment is deployed into a property deal. Therefore, you could introduce them today, they could pay their money in, and you could get paid your £5,000 commission tomorrow. So minimum investment time is 1 day. We actually had a franchisee who in January created £9,000 worth of income just from that strategy alone. So looking at the timeline, I wanted to put this together again to emphasize the speed at which you get paid, because it is the most important thing when you're first starting out, that you don't just get overwhelmed with making the potential for making £500,000. You need it to be you need to be aware of when you're getting paid and how you're going to get to that point, and pay all your obligations through that period. So sourcing, roughly a 2-month period. Rent to rent, roughly a 2-month period. Capital, introducing people into capital, I'd put that down as a 1-month period. Off-plan sales, roughly again a 1-month period, and lease options I'd put as a 2-month period. Now look at when you're getting paid here. For sourcing, it's 2 months. Conversion and new build, these long-term strategies that most people get really excited about, it's not getting paid in this entire year. I know that I'm emphasizing that point, but that's what this webinar is all about. It's all about being realistic about the way that you put this whole business together. So we've got property sourcing, average 2% fee. We've got rent to rent, average £700 fee. Off-plan stuff, an average of 6% we've put there, but obviously our franchisees have got 8%. Lease options, an average profit of between £3,000 and £8,000. That's if you're trading it on. And introduction to source capital at 5%. So how much money could you make in a year, realistically, if you put all of those strategies together? Okay, so this is a 1-year timeline of putting all of those strategies together, because what people tend to do is they look at these strategies that are faster cash flow and they think, I'm not going to make much money out of that, which is really the wrong way to look at it. If you invest your time, effort, and energy into any one of these things, any one of these structures, any one of these strategies, you can make it work to however successfully you want to make it work. There's literally no limit on it. It's just about building your business. So if you want to make property sourcing work, you might need to start employing a couple of people in order to make it a full-time thing. But you could make it a full-time thing because there is the appetite, there is the energy, and there is the investment there ready to make this kind of thing work. So what I've done with this graph is I've used this first column is how much money you need to invest in it to make it happen. So with rent to rent, either HMO or service accommodation, it doesn't really matter. I've put £12,000, which is what we're doing here is we're going to put that £12,000 into 2 deals, because on average, one rent to rent deal might cost you £6,000. So we're going to invest it at this point here. The first month we're making no income. The second month we started to make an income of £700. That's net. And then from that month on, we're making £1,000 trading that one property and making the maximum return that we possibly can. At this box here that I've highlighted in yellow, we then invest the other £6,000 into the next deal. And so we've got £1,700 net income in that first month, and then 2,000 as both properties are performing really well, which gives us an income of £14,400 for that first year. Now net over that first year, because we've invested 12,000, that's not a massive return. However, we know we're then going to make £2,000 per month on those 2 properties for the next 2 years, which is as a regular income that you don't need to put much effort into, is a fantastic way to then move up to the next strategy, because what that does is it frees up your time. Lease options, now that we've taken the income from lease options as a rent-to-rent case, so we've signed a property up on a lease option, and we're making a small margin over and above the mortgage that the person has to pay. So they're paying their mortgage, we're sort of covering their mortgage for them, and then we're renting it out as a single let in order to build up a pot of cash to buy that lease option in the future. So not a huge amount of income, but again, importantly for this one, there's no investment into that to get into that deal. So you've got £3,000 net at the end of the year. Sourcing and deal packaging. Well, like I said, we're not going to do anything in the first month because we've only found the property on a 2-month turnaround in month 1. But then we're going to make £3,000 every single month from being invested, finding deals, finding investors, and marrying those 2 up. Just 1 deal a month up until month 10. And in month 10, we've started to ramp that up a little bit. And now we're trading 2 deals a month because our investment pool has got bigger and our property pool has got bigger. Now, at the end of the year, we've made £42,000 just off sourcing. Selling off planned units, it's going to take a little bit longer to build up that network of people that are interested in that kind of thing. So by month 6, we've sold 1. And then by the end of the year, it's taken a little bit less time to sell the second one, but we've sold 2 within a year. Again, I'm not being completely outrageous and saying you're going to sell 10 in a month, because that's just not achievable, especially if you're coming to this without having any experience in property whatsoever. And so 2 a year, I think, is perfectly achievable. Again, one of our franchisees, they came on training and within a month they'd sold one of these, but I'm not using that as the example because they're an exception. They've done exceptionally well to sell that within a month. So thinking that you could sell 2 in a year, I think, is perfectly achievable, and that's nets you £32,000. And then introducing people to capital. This probably isn't going to be your main strategy like it is for one of our franchisees. However, you're going to be networking, you're going to be going out into property, you're going to be meeting people all the time. And so every now and then you might come across somebody that has an appetite for this kind of thing. And you can bring them to us, you can introduce them to capital, and you would make money. Again, it's just another way of you supplementing your cash flow. But if you look at that, you've made a net 96,400. Now, that doesn't take into account any taxes that you have to pay, like income tax. But in the property and in that taking into account all the investment that you've made, that's your net 96,400. Perfectly achievable. And now, if you notice, I've put no income whatsoever in month 1 because you're ramping it up, you're building it properly, you're building your investor database and your property database. I would say as well, just looking back at this slide, that most people come into property and what I hear from them is, I want to make £100,000 in a year. And then they go straight to the new build stuff. Now, now from me talking to you for the last 30 minutes that is not the right way to do it, because if you want to make £100,000 a year, it's going to take you 24 months to make any money out of new build, and therefore you need to in year 3 you'll need to make £300,000 in order to average £100,000 since you started putting money into that project. Or you could do something like this and start making money straight away. So what we do in order to help our franchisees, because we understand that it's a journey, just like X Factor, it's a journey. I've been on a journey. And our franchisees need to know lots of different strategies in order to apply them at the right time in the development of their property business. So we put on over 70 training days a year for our franchisees. The training is as comprehensive as we can think of, covers a multitude of property strategies, and it's all included within the fee of the franchise. So if somebody wants to come on training twice, they're perfectly capable of doing that. There's no additional fee for coming on training more than once. And what I would recommend for our franchisees to do is go through all of the strategies as soon as they can when they first come on board, and then go through that training again when they want to apply the strategy. Because they might not need new build and they might not need commercial conversions for 12 to 24 months. But come on the strategy, come on that course, learn about it, and then you've always got your eyes open to that kind of thing, which you then could trade on to somebody else. But you've been trained about it, so you know about it. Now, when they want to apply that to their own business, they can then come on that course again, and they can take more knowledge away with them in order to apply it to their own business. This is the document that our franchisees get, exactly the same thing. And what they can do is they can click on one of these courses. It takes them through to the booking system, and they can book online. And then they're on that course. They'll get a multitude of emails about that course, about all the details for that course. They're all here at head office, and they have access to that learning. Now, the keener amongst you can see that up here in March, our next training days are going to be on the 4th, 5th, and 6th, which is actually tomorrow. So we've got our next induction, sourcing, and packaging training for the next 3 days here at head office. So I'll be taking that tomorrow with a bunch of new franchisees that are coming on board with us. And it's going to be really fun taking them through that journey, because we'll have in that class, we'll have people who have not been in property ever before. This is a big jump for them, and we'll have people in that class that have got a huge amount of experience. But the way that we do things, everybody's going to walk away from those 3 days having learned something and having a different way at looking at property investment. Because we believe that property investment is open to everybody, but we also believe in thinking differently about the way that property investments are put together. So no matter what level of experience, we offer something absolutely brand new and a different way of thinking for people that get into this business. And then this is the second half of the year where we've got just as many training courses in the first half. Now, you might think, what happens then? I don't just want to come and do these fast cash flow things. I want to then move into these bigger strategies, which can, modestly speaking, can make you £20,000 or £30,000 in one deal. I've seen deals like this, title splits, assisted sales, refurbs, that can net you six figures, easily six figures. So again, I'm being quite modest in looking at the size of these deals, but I'm taking a rough average across the UK and not just looking at, say, London prices or prices in Salford, but prices across the country. Now, again, this timeline that we've got down here at the bottom, we've got title splits, we've got assisted sales, and we've got flips. So as a little introduction, that title splits are basically when you find a property and you split it into different flats, or you find a property that's already been split into different flats, but the titles haven't been split, and you go through the paperwork effort of splitting them on paper and then selling them individually. Assisted sales, like Nadia's deal, we've got a lot of information on that on our YouTube channel, where you notice a property that isn't selling and you go in and you refurb that property and then you help that person sell that property. And then you would take the majority of the uplift created from your refurb. And then in a straightforward refurb, £25,000 minimum fee. Everybody's heard of this kind of thing. Buy a property, refurb it, sell it. Very vanilla sort of strategy. So from title splits, we're looking at maybe doing one title split, because if it's done on paper, it can be a fairly quick turnaround. It's just a fairly quick conveyancing process. So we're looking at maybe doing a title split and netting £50,000 from that deal. And then if we're going to refinance that deal and hold on to the flats that we've created, we could then be making a regular rental income as well. So that's why we've got £50,000 from the refinance and then £1,800 per month thereafter from the rental income. That's going to make us £64,000 in 1 year. Assisted sales, £25,000 sort of average income from an assisted sale. But we've got one here that's going to make us, like Nadia's deal, a profit margin of £60,000. And then from flips, we've got £2,000 outlay, and then we've got £40,000 income and £50,000 income. Now you might be thinking, hold on a minute, you've just spent £2,000 on buying a property. What about solicitors' fees? What about exchange money? What about mortgage fees? Well, the Source peer-to-peer platform can offer our franchisees 100% funding, which is based on 70% of the GDV. So we can fully fund a project for our franchisees. And there might be a need for an initial outlay to pay the seller, to pay the solicitors and pay that exchange money. But if that fits within the 70%, we can reimburse them as soon as completion, as soon as they've completed on that property. So they'd make a net of £40,000 and £50,000, so £90,000 in total. And look at that, put all of those three together. All we've done is 1, 2, 3, 4 deals. We've done 4 deals in a year there, and we've made £400,000. 4 deals, that's all that's taken. But again, having access to those deals, having access to that outlay of money might not be available to you right now, which is why you've got to focus your attention on building that pot of cash first before you then move on to these bigger deals. So key factors into making this a reality: understanding of strategies. Now, as you could see from our training days, we train on every strategy that we can think of. And therefore, franchisees have a very good knowledge of how to structure deals and how to put deals together. It's obviously going to take your time, and it's going to take your investment. And I think from investment, it might not necessarily mean just a financial investment, but it actually needs you to be invested in it. So you need to give it your time, you need to give it your attention, you need to give it your focus. Your knowledge is obviously very important, and your focus. And what I mean by focus here is you need to focus on the strategy. So you might be enthused about the bigger deals, but right now, if that doesn't suit your situation, you need to focus on what you do need to do. I have a lot of conversations with people who bring deals to me, and I'll send them straight back and say, how does this help your current situation? Because they're thinking too big too quickly. And because we get to know all of our franchisees because they spend a lot of time with us, we know exactly what is necessary for them to do, and we help them along that process. And your hunger for success. So you need to stay motivated, obviously, as you're going from one strategy to the next and gradually building up your property business properly. So sourced, we've got, look, this happened so quickly that I haven't even updated this slide. So we've got over 60 offices. We've now got over 70 offices nationwide. And it's an exclusive network. So they have access to a lot of things that a lot of people don't have access to. For example, Regent Plaza. For example, introducing people to our peer-to-peer platform, but also these guys sell and trade deals between themselves all the time. We've got exclusive WhatsApp groups, we've got exclusive Facebook groups. We put on events specifically for our franchisees. So like I just said, we can fund 100% of a profitable property investment, again, only for our franchisees, and that's based on 70% of the GDV. So for example, just to run some numbers off my head, if you buy a property for £100,000, the refurb for that property is £30,000, and the GDV, the end value of that property, is £200,000. We would be able to lend you £140,000 because that's 70% of that GDV number. And that £140,000 would cover all of the purchasing costs, and it would cover the refurb costs. I hope that explains it a little bit better. So Pete is somebody who's used our peer-to-peer platform, and there's a great review from Pete. If you want to see any other reviews, again, we've got a lot of stuff on our YouTube channel, which you can go to. Just when you open up YouTube, just type in sourced. You'll see our logo as our icon, and then just click in there. We've got lots and lots and lots of videos, and not just videos about us and about the stuff we've achieved, but also educational videos. So there's more that you can learn from us. I did a series of 5 webinars in 5 days late last year, which were all about finding property and appraising property. So if you want to find out more stuff from us, go and see what we know, go and see how much credibility we have in this marketplace, and head over to YouTube to find all of that out. So we generated 35,000 property leads last year for our franchisees, and they're both investor leads and they're property leads. So we help them find the property and we help them find investors. And investors are not just useful for buying traded deals from our franchisees, but they're also useful for putting money into our franchisees' deals. So I've just got another raised hand here, so I'm going to try and open that one, but it is not letting me. Let me see if I can do that. I'm really sorry, guys. I can't see a way of opening when somebody raises a hand. There's chat, which you can go to, and I have got access to the chat. So if that helps, go there, go into the chat and put your question in chat if you've got a question. Apologies for that. So the leads that we create for our franchisees are commercial, they're portfolio leads, planning, refurbishment, apartments, HMO, all kinds of leads that we create for these guys. And we've also got a list of investors that is over 100,000 strong. And our investors come from lots of different countries around the world, and we can pop deals onto that investor database. And on average, well, I'm going to take Shahid, for example, who's our franchisee in Manchester. He says that when he puts a deal on there, it sells within 48 hours. So that's an example of how, not only how big the investment group is, but also how active they are. So our training schedule will cover these topics: sourcing and deal packaging, funding and investors, lease options, HMO. We've got support days that we put on for the franchisees. We've got rent-to-rent training, commercial conversions and planning. We've got flips and refurbs. We've got new build developments. And there will be more courses as we see fit. As soon as we think of a course that can that will benefit our franchisees, then we'll add it to our schedule straight away. Now, the support days are for our franchisees for coming along and basically talking about their business. They each get at least an hour to just sit there, talk about their business, and everybody else in the room gives them help, advice, helps them overcome any issues that they're having, and learns from the way that they're doing business particularly well. And they run every 2 months. So they have the option every 2 months to get into a room with other franchisees and me and really go into the nitty gritty of their businesses and what's working, how we can help them. With support, we get the support days, we get the training events, we get you get a dedicated account manager, you get your deals reviewed. However many deals that you find, you can shoot them over to us on our exclusive CRM system. We'll assess them for you and give you our feedback. We'll help you with any strategy improvements that we can think of, and we'll also help you with any other feedback that we can give you on making that deal better for you and your situation. What are the running costs involved in Source? So these are some of the things that you'll get. You'll become part of a national brand. You've got access to a 40,000 household territory. You've got your induction training and then access to all the other training. And then more importantly, you've got a proven business model. So we've got lots of people who are making this work because of our experience, because of the way that we teach people, accompanied with the way that we look at property. We can make this work in any part of the UK. And the value for that, the cost that we charge is only £12,500 plus VAT. We then have a monthly charge, which is the license fee. Now, the license fee covers all your property leads and your investor leads. It covers all of your email, phone, video support. You get marketing, you get the support days, you get access to the peer-to-peer platform, which is exclusive if you're paying your license fee. You obviously get the training events. You get SIN management if you want to put on a property networking group, and you get access to all of our legal documents and further exclusive franchise documents. Now, how would that compare to being on the market? Well, if you were going alone, you'd normally pay around £15 per investor lead, which would, for the amount of investor leads that we generate per franchise, that would net you to about £450 cost per month. The property leads you usually pay about around £50 for. Now, if you were going to generate over 30 days for the amount of property leads that we'd send through to you, that would cost you around £1,500 per month. But with our franchise, that's all included. Now, that would mean that would cost you, for the same amount of stuff that we can send you, £1,950 per month, and we charge you £200 plus VAT for the privilege of all of those leads, but also access to all of the peer-to-peer platform, access to our support days, access to the training days. It's a huge package for just £200 per month. So we work on the basis that we make money if you make money. It really is that simple. These are some of our franchisees and the deals that they've done. So that's Chris. He's changing that block into 14 apartments. Chris found that deal. Purchase price for that was something like 875. There you go, 875. And the GDV is 2.2 million with a build cost of around £400,000. So he's going to profit circa £1 million from that deal. No experience in property before he came to us. And that's the deal that he's netted. Now, you might think, hold on a minute, Chris, this is about building your property business in the right way. So how come you're telling me this? Well, I'm telling you this because he had taken care of all of his monthly obligations, and this was the right thing for him to do. This was the right structure and strategy for him to focus on. Whereas Everton, he had different commitments, and so what he focused on was rent to rent, one of the strategies that I showed you earlier on. And what he did was focus on serviced accommodation, and he found serviced accommodation based around his area that nets him £800 per calendar month. So that's how we build different businesses for different people, from listening to what they need. Now, we've got a property investor training event happening on the 20th of March. If you're interested in the peer-to-peer platform, or you know somebody that's interested in investing in the peer-to-peer platform, then it would be great for you to tell them about this, to come along to this. We're going to be down there on the yacht at Temple Pier in London between 2 and 5 o'clock. Come and meet Steve, the managing director. We've got some other very, very experienced people there. So if that's of interest to you, you can follow that link at the bottom of the page, because this webinar will be sent out to you tomorrow by email, or you can just type it in, quickly write it down now. And that's the end of our presentation. So I hope that helps you see the right way to build your property business. I hope that has been of value to you. I would love to hear from you. My email address, or you can write to franchise@source.co. If you want to write to me directly, my email address is chris.kirkwood@source.co. Or if you're interested in signing up for a franchise or you want a little bit more information about it, you should write to sam.clayton@source.co, because he's our franchise manager and he'll be able to help you out with that. But I appreciate you spending this time with me. I think because I have trouble looking at when somebody raises a hand, I think it might be better if you send me an email with any questions that you've got. So again, chris.kirkwood@source.co. And what I'll do is, if anybody has got any questions, I'll send the answers out to everybody that's been on this webinar, so you can all benefit from the question and from the answer. So again, thanks very much for watching, guys. I hope you have a very pleasant evening. I'm off home now to prepare for the training day that I'm going to put on tomorrow. But pleasure talking to you this evening, and thanks very much for watching.